Good afternoon. My name is Linda Larson, and this is the Returning Resident Clean Jobs Training Program information session. We're happy to have you join us this afternoon to tell you a little bit more about this program and how to apply. I am joined today by John Barr, who's at the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, Office of Employment and Training. And we also are joined by our CEJA Regional Administrator team, Larry Dawson, he's the Northern Regional Administrator, Nate Keener, who represents Central Illinois, and then Michelle Cerruti, who represents Southern Illinois. Thanks for joining us today. We also have Diana Fuller, who's the CEJA Division Manager, and Maureen Grossenheider, who's the Grant Manager for the Returning Resident Clean Jobs Training Program. And finally, we have a few people who are here supporting the team, and they'll be providing technical assistance to applicants. We'll tell you a little bit more about that as well. And those individuals are Devin Day, Gia Suggs, and Todd Rusk. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Please stay muted during the presentation. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. We'll monitor and answer questions as they come in when feasible. If we can't answer your question right away, there will be a few minutes at the end of the presentation for questions, and any questions that are not answered during the session will be addressed later through a Q&A that's posted on the Notice of Funding Opportunity website. We'll also be recording this presentation and we'll post it on the website as well. The agenda for today's presentation: first, we're going to provide a very brief overview of the CEJA workforce ecosystem and the program requirements for this program. We'll provide information about the funding that's available and eligibility information, some information on how to apply, and the GATA basics, the governmental requirements for receiving funding from the state. As well as some information about putting together a budget. And then finally, we'll provide some information about the resources and technical assistance that you can receive. Starting with the CEJA workforce ecosystem overview. The Returning Residents Clean Jobs Training Program is funded through the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. This act is comprehensive energy legislation in Illinois that centers equity and puts Illinois on track to achieve 100% renewable energy by 2050. You can see here that there's a lot of different elements to CEJA, and what we're going to be focusing on here is the Equitable Workforce and Business Development Program. The Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, or DCEO, is responsible for administering the workforce and business development programs, including the Returning Resident Program that we'll be talking about today. So here is an overview of the CEJA workforce programs that DCEO is administering. These workforce programs are intended to expand the clean energy workforce in Illinois. Illinois and the federal government are investing a lot of money in growing renewable energy, electric vehicles, doing energy efficiency, and we need to expand the workforce to do that work. Workforce training programs are focused on training equity, investment eligible individuals. We'll talk a little bit in this presentation about what that means. There are 4 workforce programs, and the one down in the right-hand left corner is the one we'll be talking about today. The goal of these programs is to train people for jobs, apprenticeships, and then to ultimately grow businesses in Illinois to do clean energy projects that are funded through CEJA and other state and federal legislation. So just a very brief introduction to the 4 workforce programs that DCEO is administering. The first one is the Climate Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program. This one will help prepare people for registered apprenticeships and clean energy jobs. It'll be delivered in 3 regional centers. They'll provide basic construction training with a clean energy focus, and funding for the barrier reduction program. Barrier reduction funds will be included in this. The Energy Transition Navigator program is intended to recruit participants for all of the CEJA workforce programs. It will be providing outreach and education to communities, to employers, to stakeholders, to job seekers to help build awareness of CEJA programs and grow the clean energy workforce. And then finally, these two programs are similar. The Clean Jobs Workforce Network program and the Returning Resident Clean Jobs program both have the goal to train people for entry-level clean energy jobs. They both provide training that utilizes a standard clean job curriculum framework. They both include funding for support services, barrier reduction funds, and one will be offered, the Workforce Network program will be offered at 13 hub locations throughout the state. The Returning Resident program will be providing the program inside Illinois Department of Corrections facilities. All of these workforce programs are aimed at preparing people for clean energy jobs. These are jobs in the solar industry, in wind, electric vehicles, energy efficiency and healthy buildings, and then finally energy storage, as well as other industries that are aimed at reducing emissions. Clean energy jobs, there's a broad definition of clean energy jobs that's outlined in the CEJA legislation. These are jobs that manufacture, that develop, that build, that install, maintain, and provide ancillary services in these industries. These are also jobs that provide administrative, sales, or other support functions in these industries. We get a lot of questions about the status of the workforce program, so I wanted to just provide a very brief overview of where the programs are at. The Climate Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program grantees have been selected and will be announced soon. The Clean Jobs Workforce Network program, the first round of reviews is complete and negotiations are in progress for the grantees that were recommended for funding. A second round of reviews is in progress, and we are still accepting applications from the Danville region. So if you are interested in applying for funding for this program, please take a look at that funding opportunity. The Energy Transition Navigator program, likewise, the first round of reviews has been completed and negotiations are in progress with those organizations that were recommended for funding. A second round of reviews is in progress, and we are still accepting applications from the East St. Louis region. And then finally, for the program we're talking about today, applications are due April 15th and will be for the first round of reviews. And you can learn a little bit more about all of these funding opportunities and receive updates by going to the DCEO CEJA website that's listed right here. The CEJA Workforce Programs center equity. Some groups of people and communities in Illinois have benefited more from clean energy investments, from good paying clean energy jobs. Some groups of people and some communities have suffered more from environmental impacts and economic disinvestment. So the goal of CEJA is to ensure that the benefits of clean energy investments and good paying clean energy jobs are distributed equitably. What does equity look like? How is it different from equality? Equality means basically that everyone gets the same resources. Equity is a little bit different. It recognizes that each person or group has different needs or circumstances, and that those needs and circumstances must be considered when allocating resources and providing opportunities. Equity seeks to eliminate systemic barriers and level the playing field for underserved groups. One of the groups of people that are targeted in all of these CEJA workforce programs is returning residents. In 2023, according to the Prison Policy Initiative, 160,000 people were in Illinois' criminal legal system. You can see on this graph that about half of them were in state prisons or local jails, federal prisons, as well as on parole, and another half were on probation. This is about 1.3% of Illinois total population. We know that employment is impacted by incarceration. People who have been incarcerated face many barriers upon release that make it difficult to find employment. You can see in this graph, also from the Prison Policy Initiative, that people who've been incarcerated have much higher rates of unemployment, and that is especially true for Black women and Black men. When returning residents do find work, it's often part-time or occasional work. And so the CEJA workforce programs are aimed at addressing this inequity and helping to support people who have been incarcerated with finding employment. So what's the opportunity here? The CEJA workforce programs are training and hiring returning residents. The clean energy industry needs qualified workers to meet the demand for clean energy technologies and services. Returning residents in Illinois can help us meet that demand. All of the CEJA workforce programs will be serving returning residents. The Returning Resident Clean Jobs Training Program will be providing training for returning residents for people inside correctional facilities. The other CEJA workforce programs will be providing training for returning residents on the outside. And all of the programs are meant to support and reduce barriers to facilitate success. Another CEJA target population for the CEJA workforce programs are communities impacted by incarceration. CEJA workforce programs prioritize people who live in restore, reinvest, and renew communities. These are communities that have high rates of incarceration, gun injury, unemployment, and child poverty. The workforce programs that are part of CEJA are intended to provide job opportunities and promote economic development in these communities that have been impacted by incarceration. So now let's get into a little bit more about the requirements of the Returning Resident Clean Jobs Training Program. The program goals of the Returning Resident Program is to increase access to and opportunities for training in the clean energy industry for returning residents, to help returning residents succeed in the labor market generally and in the clean energy sector specifically, to prepare people for entry-level, good-paying clean energy jobs, and to support returning residents in retaining employment and growing their careers. If you are considering applying to deliver this program inside one of the correctional facilities, there are a number of elements that you'll be delivering. These elements include program entry, helping people enroll in the program, providing training. We'll talk a little bit about what that entails, providing student support services, engaging with employers to help facilitate job placement, providing transition and follow-up services when people are released, providing wraparound support services, coordinating with different agencies and workforce groups after participants are released to provide that support, and then data tracking and evaluation. And centered throughout the program, these program elements is equity. This program will employ an equity-focused program culture and core equity values, and we'll be talking about that, what that looks like today. The general participant life cycle here is shown from program entry inside the correctional facilities, training program delivery, completion, and then moving on to transition support to gain employment or advanced training, and then follow-up services. Throughout offering this program, there will be support services, including tutoring, wraparound supports, mentoring. We'll talk a little bit more about that. This orange dotted line in the middle, one of the unique challenges of this program is providing support while individuals are inside the correctional facilities, and then continuing to support them on the outside after they have completed the training program. And we recognize that the discharge from correctional facilities can happen happen at different time points and in participants' participation in the program. Some participants may be discharged sooner than expected before the training is complete. Some may complete the program several years ahead of their release. They're eligible to participate 36 months before release. Some participants may be released to communities that are far away from the correctional facility, and some participants may not know where they will be released until shortly before their out date. So all of these possible release scenarios can impact your ability to provide training and support to participants throughout this participant life cycle. The training will be provided in 4 Illinois Department of Corrections facilities. The Department of Corrections has identified these 4 facilities as places where there's training space available. So Kewanee Life Skills Reentry Center is a men's facility in the Northwest region. Western Illinois Correctional Center is also a men's facility in Mount Sterling in Western Illinois. The Decatur Correctional Center serves women, and the Vienna Correctional Center down in the southern region serves men. Want to note that that these correctional facilities serve people who from all throughout Illinois. About 50% of the people in these correctional facilities will be released to Cook County, and 50% are released to other parts of the state. Women are more likely to be released into rural areas. So one of the challenges that we're trying to address through this program is how you'll make sure that the program will serve people that are released throughout Illinois. So here again, imagining that about 50% of the people that you serve could be released to Cook County and then throughout Illinois. I ran some numbers to see where people were, where the percentage of exits by sentencing region in the different correctional facilities. So in Vienna Correctional Facility, there were 575 exits in 2023. And you can see that 34% of those exits were from Cook County. Now, some people are sentenced in one county, but then decide to move to a different one or released to a different county. So this doesn't perfectly capture where people are released, but it can be, it's the data that's available. And then you can see that there's a significant number of people that are released to Southern Illinois in Vienna. Central Illinois and Northern Illinois are also represented. In contrast, Western Illinois, there were 61% exits from Cook County, and then a fair number from Northern Illinois and Central Illinois. Kewanee, you can see the percentage of exits from Cook County and Kewanee. Northern Illinois and Central Illinois, a little bit less from Southern Illinois. And then Decatur, what I found interesting about this is that only 7% were from Cook County. Now, of course, it varies widely from year to year, but in general, we know that more women are incarcerated from rural areas than men. So this would seem to reflect that. So the program design for the Returning Resident Program is to provide on-the-ground services for participants post-release. So we are asking teams to not only propose to provide training for people inside the correctional facilities, but to provide post-release support on the ground in one or more economic development regions. We recommend that you propose to serve the regions where where there are large numbers of returning residents who are released, such as Cook County. So for an example, if you're proposing to serve Kewaunee, you might propose to serve the Northwest region, the North Central region, and Northeast region A. So you don't have to propose to serve the whole state, but we are looking for applicant teams to propose to serve at least one economic development region and provide on-the-ground support services for people after they're released in that region. So what about people who are released to other parts of the state that are not served by the applicant team? This is where we are hoping to facilitate connections with the other CEJA workforce programs and the other DCEO workforce programs. Participants may be released to other CEJA workforce hubs. These little round orange dots on the map are the 13 workforce hubs, or they can be referred to climate work centers upon release to receive program services and transition supports. If they're being released to an area that isn't close to a workforce hub, grantees can encourage them to connect with an Illinois WorkNet Center or American Job Center. A little bit about each step of the participant life cycle. Program entry. Who is the program going to serve? The program will serve people in Illinois Department of Corrections custody that are scheduled to be released within 36 months. People 17 older, and they must meet certain testing requirements to participate and also not pose safety or security risk. The applicant teams, if you apply to deliver this program, you'll be helping participants fill out applications and assessments. You'll be doing interviews and a coaching session and provide 1-week program orientation for participants. Once you get through that entry phase, you'll begin the training program. So what will be taught? The Returning Resident Clean Jobs Training Program is utilizing the standard Clean Jobs curriculum framework adapted for use within the correctional facilities. You can see here that it looks very similar to the one that will be provided by the workforce hubs. There will be some pre-assessments, a bridge program that will include essential employability skills and clean energy basics and technical skills, then transitioning into job-specific training, solar PV training or HVAC building maintenance training, and then finally transitioning to job placement and retention services. Throughout this program, we are expecting the grantees to provide student supports, tutoring, coaching, mentorships, retesting, makeup classes, enrichment activities to help enable success of participants. The Clean Jobs Curriculum Framework is available on the Notice of Funding Opportunity website. I strongly encourage you to read through it closely to learn about the requirements of the training program. Is the curriculum taught in the CEJA Workforce Network Program Hubs the same as the one that will be taught here? Almost. The Bridge program, the focus on essential employability skills and clean energy basics is the same. There's a more limited number of job-specific training options that are available to grantees. There's some relaxed work-based learning requirements, recognizing that it's going to be hard to get employers in there and provide those real-world work-based learning. There's recommendations for delivering curriculum inside correctional facilities and a discussion of some of the barriers that returning residents face in completing training and finding employment in the clean energy industry. And then finally, some suggestions for overcoming those barriers and delivering the program in an equitable, accessible way. Can you propose a different job-specific training option? Yes. And what you'll need to do is propose a program that meets the jobs and training criteria that are listed in the Clean Jobs Curriculum Framework. The jobs must be in demand throughout Illinois. They must be clean energy jobs. They must have opportunities for people with barriers to transportation and legal barriers. And they must generally provide living wages, steady income, and benefits. Training criteria. The training program cannot exceed 200 hours in addition to the bridge program, must be aligned with industry recognized job task analyses, lead to industry recognized credentials, and be suitable for delivery in a correctional setting. There's a number of training program instructor requirements that we are going to be looking for when you apply. All instructors and support staff need to have strong connections to returning residents in the organizations that serve them. They must be approved to provide training services by the Illinois Board of Higher Education. They must have diversity, equity, inclusion, and access training and cultural sensitivity training. The ability to provide trauma-informed training and support services, and the ability to pass a Department of Corrections background check. The instructors who provide the bridge program curriculum need to have intermediate to advanced knowledge in construction, the building trades, or clean energy. The solar training instructors, if you propose to provide the solar training curriculum, your instructors will need to be a NABCEP associate registered training provider and have experience in solar PV system design, sales, and installation. And if you propose to offer the HVAC training curriculum, the instructors will need intermediate to expert level knowledge and experience in HVAC system design, installation, and maintenance. You can read in the Notice of Funding Opportunity more about training spaces and equipment, but we have received information about the spaces available in each of the different correctional facilities where we are proposing that the training be offered. Each facility has a designated CEJA classroom and lab with tables and chairs and places for storing equipment that can be secured. If you do need additional space, you may be able to use correctional center grounds or mobile training units. Applicants will need to supply all training equipment and tools, and computers and tablets must be approved by Illinois Department of Corrections IT. A little bit about the training logistics. The training must be delivered in person. No remote learning is allowed. There must be at least one instructor in the classroom or lab at all times. The cohorts must be no bigger than 15 students. And IDOC is recommending that the programs be delivered full-time, 5 days a week. Generally, the times that work in these facilities are between 7:30 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. with the possibility of some evening and weekend classes. And then with the caveat that instruction times may be limited by security, availability, and movement issues. We are asking applicants to consider the ways that they can deliver the program that will improve accessibility, overcome barriers, and facilitate the success of the participants in the program. What could that look like? The Notice of Funding Opportunity provides several examples of things that you may want to consider. Personalized training approaches that focus on empowerment, hands-on interactive learning, contextualized learning with relevant real-world examples. You might consider offering printed packets for lockdowns in these facilities, alternative testing approaches to demonstrate mastery, scenario or role-playing approaches, and student support services, which could include tutoring, translation services, mentorships, retesting, and makeup sessions. As with the Clean Jobs Workforce Network program, the Workforce Hubs, this program will offer comprehensive support to overcome barriers to program access, to completion, and to finding and retaining employment after release. What could this look like? This support should consist of wraparound supports referrals to healthcare, substance use, and housing once people are released, vital document preparation, transportation and childcare, emergency bill payments, expungement, and other legal supports. Student supports during the training program could include tutoring, makeup classes, educational enrichment, and then finally transition and career supports may include things like mentoring and coaching, job exploration activities, placement services, a job fair, resume writing and mock interviews, follow-up support to support retention. Again, recognizing that people could be released at different times, how do you provide these support services on the inside and on the outside? What might this look like? On the inside, we are looking for applicants to consider ways that they will support the participants through the training program by offering those student supports. They could also help participants prepare for their job search by doing mock interviews, helping them write and prepare their resume, doing some career exploration activities. Encouraging them to participate in IDOC pre-release procedures is also important. Help them gather their vital documents and have their ID when they're released. And then finally, conducting a needs assessment near the end of before release, so that you're prepared to offer services and identify those supports that are needed once they are released. So they complete your program. They are released. On the outside, what could the support look like? It could look like providing assistance and helping them apply for jobs. It could be mentoring. It could be providing job and financial coaching, transportation assistance before they get their driver's license, referrals to substance use treatment and healthcare, driver's education fees. These are just a few of the supports that you can provide. So here's an example release scenario. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the challenges is that you could have people being released all over the state of Illinois. You may not feasibly be able to provide these on-the-ground support services to all participants in all areas. So what could this look like? Perhaps you have 15 people who complete the program. 10 of them are released within the next 6 months. And 5 of them go to Cook County. Let's say that that's your proposed service territory. So your team will be responsible for providing those support services and helping them get aligned with clean energy employment in the industry. Perhaps 2 of the people that you serve are released to Rockford. That's not in your proposed service territory, so you refer them to the Rockford CEJA Workforce Hub. The hubs are required to accept referrals from the Clean Jobs from the Returning Resident Program, and they can continue to provide support, additional training, and help the individuals from your program get access to employment. 2 might go to East St. Louis. There's also a workforce hub that we're hoping to launch in the East St. Louis region. So again, referral to the workforce hubs will be a key strategy for providing that continuation of program services on the inside and the outside. One might be released to Galesburg, and there isn't a workforce hub nearby. In this case, you may decide to help them by referring them to an Illinois WorkNet Center where they can receive some transition support services and wraparound supports. Obviously, this is complicated, and it's going to require close coordination. So we are expecting the grantees, expecting the organizations who run these programs to coordinate closely with the other CEJA workforce programs, with those hubs, with the Illinois Work Centers, to facilitate warm handoffs, document sharing, case notes, identify those support needs, and share employer contacts to facilitate the success of participants in your program. So After participants are released, and we are looking for applicant teams to provide strong follow-up support to help participants not just attain employment, but to actually retain that employment. So for the first 12 months after release, we are expecting active support, identifying those support service needs, those wraparound supports, transition services, student supports, tracking employment outcomes, job coaching, financial coaching, contacting employers and intervening if needed, providing peer support groups. These are a few examples of things that you can provide to support the participants after release, providing referrals for assistance opening a business. And then beyond that first year, the program will be providing long-term support in terms of tracking outcomes, continuing to follow up with participants, providing referrals for additional services, and offering support to participants to help them advance in their career. So in order for this program to be successful, we're going to need strong relationships with employers. Not all employers in the clean industry are comfortable with hiring people with records, and we're going to need to do, the grantees and DCO in general is going to need to do some work behind the scenes to work with employers to encourage them to hire returning residents and to help them overcome some of the barriers and concerns that they have, to help them provide a supportive environment for the returning residents who will be going through this program. So we are asking grantee teams to propose employer engagement activities to encourage employers to hire and support returning residents from your program. So what could that look like? You may propose to provide training events or forums for employers, networking events, job placement facilitation. You might partner with trade associations and industry leaders. All programs will be required to have at least one job fair inside each correctional facility. These are just a few ways you may want to engage employers to help facilitate your participants' success. Throughout the program, we'll be asking grantees to set program outcome goals and to utilize data and reporting systems that are provided by DCEO to measure progress towards meeting those outcomes. So as you apply for this program, we'll be asking you to to set goals in terms of the number of participants who you will enroll in the program, who will complete the program, who will be released and transition into jobs or additional training, and then retention goals. How many of those individuals who are placed in jobs will stay in the job in the year following or in several years? Equity must be at the center of all of the program elements that we've covered today. Program entry, training and delivery, student support services, employer engagement, transition and follow-up services, wraparound supports, coordination, and data tracking. We are asking applicant teams to consider the way that they will infuse equity in their program culture and how they will incorporate the core equity values of equity, inclusion, diversity, and belonging and accessibility into their program at every step of the way. So what does this look like? What does infusing equity look like in the program? These are just a few ways. This is not comprehensive, but one of the things that we'll be asking you to do is identify what that looks like in practice. This could involve involving justice impacted people in shaping the design and delivery of your program. Could mean empowering participants to succeed and by identifying and leveraging their strengths. It could mean creating a welcoming and inclusive environment within a correctional setting. Could mean creating a sense of belonging within the clean energy industry. could mean making training and support services accessible and delivering those support services equitably. It could mean addressing the barriers to training completion and job placement. And then finally, importantly, it means providing staff training and professional development to increase cultural competency. All of the applicant teams are asked to identify a program administrator. This is a specific program role that we're asking participant teams to fill. These program administrators will be providing recruitment into the program by coordinating with the Illinois Department of Corrections. They'll be also coordinating with the CEJA workforce programs, the regional administrators, and the WorkNet centers to help facilitate placements after release. They'll be providing training, guidance, and oversight. They're focused on offering transition services and follow-up oversight, making sure that there's a smooth transition from services on the inside and outside, and also transitioning into employment. They'll be providing input on a handbook for employers, a hiring returning residents handbook, and they will be responsible for providing that employer engagement, promoting policies that will enable returning residents to be hired and to thrive in these clean energy businesses. They'll be facilitating job placement with clean energy employers. So that's a little bit about the requirements of the program. Now I'll be going into some of the funding and applicant eligibility requirements. The funding that is available for this program is $6 million per year. Applicants can be awarded between $1 million and $2.5 million for offering services within, for proposing to provide services in each of the designated correctional facilities that I showed earlier. You can apply to deliver the program at one or more facility, but you must submit a separate application for each facility. This is a 1-year grant with two 12-month renewals based on grantee performance. And the anticipated cost per participant is $25,000 per year, or $25,000 per participant for the program. Who can apply? This program, organizations that can apply are community-based organizations that are defined as organizations that provide employment, skill development, or related services to members of the community. They can include community colleges, nonprofits, and local governments, and they must have a history of serving committed persons or justice-involved persons. We're encouraging organizations to partner with each other to deliver the program. This is just an example of what it might look like. You've got application enrollment on the left and transition services on the right and program delivery in the middle. And you can see here that we have a main grantee in blue and a few partners that are offering part of the training, some of the support and transition services. It may be helpful for you to write down a list of all of those program areas and think about where you have expertise, what parts of the program you can deliver, and where you might need some help, where you might need partnerships. So in terms of transition services, offering the training, providing the wraparound supports, these are all different elements, and it may be worth exploring your organization's strengths and the strengths of other organizations that could be potential partners. Collectively, the applicant team should be able to demonstrate the ability to effectively serve returning residents. They should have agreements with employers for job placement and on-the-job training. They should have the ability to provide training inside correctional facilities using the Clean Energy Jobs curriculum framework. and the capacity to provide supportive services on the outside or referrals to other organizations that are outside their service territory. So here's just a few examples of the types of organizations in your area that might be interested in partnering. These could be workforce organizations, organizations that provide barrier reduction services, educational institutions, as well as employers. We're recommending that applicants consider partnerships that can provide inside-outside program delivery. So again, this program is asking you to identify an organization that can provide the clean jobs training on the inside of the correctional facility. So this might be an organization that's located close to that correctional facility. And then they might partner with an organization that can provide on-the-ground support services in regions where participants are likely to be released. The department is hosting 5 networking events to help facilitate partnerships and give you a chance to ask questions about the program and interact with others who may be interested in applying. There will be a statewide networking event on the 13th, and then a few other events following that, where if you're interested in proposing to serve the Vienna Correctional Facility, for instance, you'll show up to that session, and that will be specifically focused on the team that is proposing to provide services there. The registration links can be found on the NOFA webpage, and we'll put those links in the chat. So how can you apply? What are the things that you need to prepare? I'm going to talk a little bit about this, but if you're interested in learning a little bit more, we're hosting another session next week where we'll be going over how to develop a successful proposal, and I'd encourage you to sign up for that as well. There's a number of different application documents that make up the application package. There's an application template that you'll be using, a budget template, a grant application. This is a simple fillable PDF form, a Conf, and then 2 disclosure forms. And then finally, you'll be pulling together some attachments. These can include resumes, job descriptions if you don't have all of the main positions filled, memorandums of understanding. All of the notice of funding materials are found on the NOFA website that's linked here. And we'll also put that in the chat. We're doing things a little bit differently than we did for the other CEJA programs in that we are creating a fillable program application. So instead of writing a proposal that's 20 pages long, we're asking you to answer a series of questions, indicate your program outcome metrics, and your staffing plan all in one application, so you don't have to submit multiple different forms. It's all here. Hopefully it will make the process a little bit easier for applicant teams to know what they need to answer and how they need to put together their proposal. A few tips for preparing a strong proposal. Number 1, make sure that you respond to the content of the actual notice of funding opportunity. Your proposal program design should strongly align with the program description and the requirements that I've talked about in this presentation. The review criteria should guide your proposal development. You'll want to tell your story, highlight the strengths of your team, and make a case for your project and its potential. And then finally, always think about staffing, budgets, and partnerships when talking through your proposal. Who is going to be delivering these services? How much does it cost? When you're reading the notice of funding opportunity, we recommend close reading strategies, highlight, dissect, outline the key points. The notice of funding opportunity contains the important information about expected activities, eligibility criteria, the documents that you'll need from partners. Make sure that you understand all of the requirements, the musts versus the shoulds. So here's just an example of a section of the notice of funding opportunity. I've highlighted some of the important requirements, and then I've summarized them on the right here. So those requirements are that you need to, when you're delivering the training, you need to utilize the Clean Jobs curriculum framework. That needs to include the Bridge program as well as a job-specific training option. You must be approved to provide the training by an accredited body, and then there's some flexibility in how you deliver the training. Program requirements list the what you'll need to do, and your application will cover the how. Draw on your experiences, on best practices, and other resources for ideas on how to deliver the program elements, such as how you'll deliver the training, how you'll coordinate with others, how you'll deliver the barrier reduction services and make the training accessible, and how you'll engage with employers. For each task, consider the implications for staffing, budget, and strategy. So for instance, for training delivery, what staff will you need, or what partnerships will you need to offer the different components of the training? How much is that going to cost? And then what are your strategies? What's the how? How are you going to deliver that? Your application is assessed based on how well you meet the review criteria. And here we have the four main elements that we're reviewing. We're looking at your application team qualifications and capacity. That's worth 35% of your total score. The documentation of need is worth 10%. The project quality and integration is worth 40%, and the cost effectiveness is 15%. I like to say that creativity is not a virtue. When you're developing a grant proposal, we want to make sure that you understand the requirements and that you're delivering the program requirements as they're written in the notice of funding opportunity. So here's just an example from the notice of funding opportunity where you can see the scoring, the merit review scoring. It's pretty detailed in what we're looking for, and so your application should really align with each of those elements. Okay, I'm going to turn the time over to John in just a minute, but before I do, I wanted to wrap up with some resources and support. First of all, if you'd like to learn more about putting together an effective proposal, next week at 1, we'll be offering another webinar on some of those tips for putting together all of the information you need. You can also get technical assistance from a CEJA NOFO coach. You can sign up here using this QR code, or we'll also put a link in the chat. You can receive multiple TA sessions. These are one-on-one sessions. We can walk through your proposal, answer questions. We do ask that you prepare for the technical assistance session by reading through the NOFO carefully, looking at all of the elements of the package, reading through the Clean Jobs curriculum, come prepared with questions or a draft for review. Listen to these information sessions and read through the Q&A. A lot of the questions that we get during these technical assistance sessions are available, or the answers are available in these materials, so we ask that you take a look at them first. And then finally, a quick reminder about the networking events that are available in March. And then finally, we do maintain a question and answer for each of the notices of funding opportunities, and you can submit your questions here, and we will post answers to these questions on the notice of funding opportunity page. I am going to now stop share and turn it over to John Barr, who will be providing the GATA training element of this presentation. So if you do have questions, I'll also be on at the end, and feel free to ask those questions.
Great, thanks, Linda. If you could allow my screen to share, that would be great. No problem. And maybe suggest, I'll just say that I noticed some of the individuals who are participating today, and so welcome and thank you for your interest in the webinar. This half of the session is really going to focus around the very technical aspects of the application around the compliance side of this. And so many of you have submitted grants, will have heard this information and presentation before. So um, um, Linda, I don't know if it would make sense to have just a quick break here for specific questions about the returning resident side of this before we
Sure.
dug into the grants, because this really is going to be a grants 101, a lot of information that some have already mastered. So maybe if that works, we can open it up for some initial questions.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. I am just seeing a few questions in the in the chat about staffing. I can try to ask those now, but if you also want to raise your hand, we can try to address those as well. One of the questions, can we get a copy of this PowerPoint? Yes, we'll post it on the website and along with the recording. Certain requirements on staffing. Yes, there's requirements on staffing. If you look at the application, it has a staffing plan included in it, including a few roles that you'll need to fill. We do recognize that you may not have everyone hired for these roles that you'll need to fill. If you plan to hire, you can indicate that, and we ask that you include a job posting in lieu of a resume for those hires. So question, is there an ability for providers to provide similar curriculum certifications to ClimateWorks pre-apprenticeship? Hubs provide MC3, NCCER with additional clean jobs training. That's something that I think we may need to talk. John's shaking his head. No, we're doing the clean jobs curriculum.
Pretty
We'll get
sure.
back to you, but
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, as it relates, especially as it relates to the having your organization recognized by the State Board of Higher Education as it relates to delivering the training. So that's a piece that we'll definitely post on the FAQs or the Q&A.
Yeah, so instructor requirements will provide a little bit of information on that. NCCER, they do have a core construction training. A lot of the clean energy basics curriculum is drawn from the main elements of that program. So there's going to be some overlap. If you have experience with NCCER or M3, NAB2's curriculum, you'll see some overlap between that. But this is not a pre-apprenticeship training program. This is utilizing the Clean Jobs curriculum. Okay, is there a requirement to have a director or instructors just for this program? Can they be staff and faculty from other parts of the institution? You're going to probably want some full-time staff, especially a program administrator, but if there are other people who are part-time staff and are involved in delivering other programs, that's fine. That happens all the time. You might have part-time staff delivering certain aspects of the program. Is there anything in the CEJA program to tie employers to hiring the graduates? Is there a list of CEJA employers? Well, there's a energy equity portal that we're going to be utilizing with the Illinois Power Agency to try to facilitate placements from all of the CEJA programs. CEJA employers will be able to post jobs there, and job applicants can also be referred to employers through that portal. Will Department of Corrections provide a document that lists their screening process for workers and training materials and supplies to streamline qualification for entry to the facility? There's some information about that in the notice of funding opportunity, so please read through that. I can also forward that question to Department of Corrections and see if we can get a little bit more information on that.
Okay, so I think that'd be a great place to jump in then. And we are going to go and focus around the administrative requirements, which will have a large emphasis around the Illinois Grant Accountability and Transparency Act. And so today we're going to talk about what is classified as the pre-award requirements. So each of the applications under the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act has to be pre-qualified. And so in Illinois, there is a law that basically talks about how there's a need to have increased standardization and transparency around how the state awards grant funds. And so many of our procedures that we utilize to issue grants are taken directly out of the GATA requirements. And so on the one hand, there is a huge degree of value in that standardization. So you as a grantee, you should hopefully be able to understand kind of the information and the rules of engagement. On the flip side, there are some constraints around some of the templates, some of the department's ability to deviate from the requirements that are outlined in the NOFO and waive some of the application requirements. And one of the things that really gets us hung up is, especially if you're submitting an application and that application due date. And I've been on the other side of this as far as writing a grant, to the U.S. For federal funding, where if your application is even 2 minutes late, it's accepted at 5:02, and the deadline was at 5 o'clock. Well, then that application is late. And so again, I would just draw your attention to some of the technical requirements of the funding application, and then it's not our intent to to have a gotcha situation, but it's intended to level the playing field for all applicants that apply. And so just know that there are certain things that the agency is not able to waive. And so we're hopeful that you'll take advantage of some of the technical assistance opportunities to get your application completed and submitted with plenty of time. We talked about how all grant awards have to be pre-qualified. There is a whole process that is standardized through our Office of Management and Budget at the state. And there is a registration process. Each organization that receives a grant award has to complete a financial and administrative risk assessment. It's called an internal control questionnaire, and all of this is handled online through our Office of Management and Budget. And there are links within the notice of funding opportunity that can take you directly to these places. And I'll show you some of this information this morning or this afternoon. In addition, once you submit your application, if you're selected for or identified as a finalist, we will work with you to determine your programmatic risk. And then, in addition, there are some disclosures and conflict of interest documents that are also required. So the key points here at the outset is, as you leave today, If your organization is not already registered with the state of Illinois GATA portal, I would encourage you to do that, right away this afternoon or first thing on Monday. And so I would connect with your executive directors or your fiscal agents or your fiscal folks, and go ahead and go through the process of getting pre-qualified and completing that financial and administrative risk assessment. This is something that is needed for all grants, not only with the Department of Commerce, but also other agencies with the state of Illinois as well. So this is actually the website. So it's grants.illinois.gov. This is the point in which you would go ahead and start that process. In addition to registering your organization, you would select your method of how you handle indirect costs or overhead costs, right? And the purpose of this presentation is not to go into indirect costs, but know that is something that as you submit your application, you have to determine how you, as an organization, handle those indirect costs. Typically, smaller organizations utilize an indirect cost rate utilizing what's called the de minimis rate, which is 10% of a base of the grant budget. So here is the direct link for that grant registration. Completing your grant registration process is a pre-qualification trigger. And if everything is in place with your organization, for instance, you have a sam.gov account, you have a unique, a federal unique identifying number, you're in good standing with the Secretary of State if that's applicable to your organization. You're not on the federal excluded parties list. You're not on the Illinois stop payment list or on a sanctions list from the Department of Human Services. And Again, the key here is that your organization must be pre-qualified on the date that you submit your application. If you are not pre-qualified with the state, your application unfortunately will not be reviewed by the evaluation team. So if there are no issues, the GATA portal will send an email to communicate a qualified status. If there are issues, the GATA portal will email that contact person with the information on how to fix the information. So again, do this right away. Make sure that you have enough time to get any issues cleaned up before the submission deadline. The one thing that you can't fix is if your organization had some issues and the federal agency identified you to be excluded as a grantee, you'll no longer be able to apply for state funding either until you are off of that federal excluded parties list. So there is a framework, right? So part of the GATA is to identify um, um, areas of concern or risk for grantees. I mentioned that every organization submits and completes an internal control questionnaire. You should you should complete this questionnaire based on your organization as a whole. It shouldn't be like just your unit or just a unit that might administer the returning resident program. All state agencies utilize this same ICQ. So if you've already completed this, you've already completed your registration and have a internal control questionnaire completed, then we'll just use that. But note that questionnaire is updated on an annual basis. And so just know if you're maybe you maybe you registered and you submitted this, 2 years ago, just know that you will need to submit an updated internal control questionnaire because it's asking you about your organization's um, fiscal and administrative capacity to um, run or administer a state grant, right? I mentioned the programmatic risk assessment will be also considered at the point when we're ready to negotiate a grant. If your grant is selected as a finalist, any of the conditions identified in the fiscal risk assessment or the program risk assessment would be included in the terms and conditions of your grant agreement. I've mentioned that each grantee has to select an indirect cost rate option. Your options are that you can utilize your federally negotiated indirect cost rate if your organization has that. You could potentially negotiate a rate with the state of Illinois. You can use the 10% rate, which I would say many organizations will either utilize their federal rate or elect to use the 10%. You are able to negotiate this, but it is fairly uncommon. Um, and you may also elect to decline the use of an indirect rate. You may have direct administrative costs that can be, there's a clear line association between the cost of the administrative activity directly back to this program. The key with the indirect cost information is not to get too hung up on it. I'm going to show you the budgets, the budget requirements as we go through here. And we're not going to disqualify your application um, or mark points off if there was issues around your indirect cost. That really doesn't go to the substance of your proposal, but we will have to have this cleaned up if you were to enter into negotiations with the state for a grant. I'm just gonna moving forward. So just some conversation around the standard application and grant award documents. There is the notice of funding opportunity, and that's what we've been talking about. There is the uniform application for state grant assistance. There's the uniform budget template, and then there is the notice of state award. So the application requirements, typically in a grant application, and that is true for this returning residence, there is that uniform grant application, uniform budget template, conflict of interest disclosure, mandatory disclosures, and then we get into the technical proposals. Okay. Now, so it is important for you to submit all of the materials that is included in the NOFO. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for a second, and I'm going to pull up the actual NOFO so you can see exactly what we're talking about here. Okay, so this is the PDF version of this is called the NOFO supplement, but it basically outlines the program description. It talks about the required elements within the program, includes the program definitions, and here are the program requirements in detail. I'm going to skip through, so sorry if it's gets you a bit dizzy here. I'm going to skip through to some very important information. And Okay, so start, I want to just direct your attention to part D, the application information on page 15. Okay, so part D2, content and form of application submission, right? So these are the things that our accountability office requires. So to make sure that you have a separate attachment for each one of these. So make a note in your notes that each of these boxes, this should be seen as like a checkbox, right? So when you submit your application to this smart sheet, make sure that you have uniform grant application, you have the uniform budget, you've got the conflict of interest disclosure, you've got your mandatory disclosure. Now, specific to this program, make sure that you have attachment A. And that is basically your technical proposal, or what is called in this NOFO the returning resident clean jobs training program application that includes all of these core elements, right? So it talks about your organizational qualifications, talks about your need, talks about the plan, talks about a budget narrative, right? Um, it also requests supplementary attachments, right? So resumes, um, budget and staffing information for any partners not described, memorandums of understanding and support letters. All of those can be packaged. Would recommend that you, especially these supplementary attachments, I would recommend that you compile those into one PDF document. Okay. Um, and let's see. So again, so if you're going through at a minimum, right, the state is going to expect to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 attachments. Okay. So if you submit your application and you do not have the content included in these 5 applications, your proposal will be rejected. So again, just make sure that you have all of that minimum content submitted. And the place that you should submit the application is listed right here, number D4. Okay, so again, highlight this in your notes that applications that are received by April 15th will be included in the first round, right? So we're doing this because we know this is a very complex funding opportunity, and we want to get the funds out as quickly as possible, but we also want to provide opportunity to, accept proposals if we don't award grants in every location. So, um, we will have a cutoff, and we will have to wait until all of the applications that we received by 5 o'clock on April 15th, those have to be reviewed first, right? And then once all of those are reviewed, we'll award the grants that meet all the requirements. But then there may be additional funding available, and then we would kind of look at the applications received after April 16th if there were any. The place that you must submit your application is to this smart sheet, and just know that it is sometimes it can be tricky. So the bottom line here is do not wait to the last minute. So we receive on every application round, it's Murphy's Law, right? So technology always doesn't act the way that we hope it does, and we are not able to waive the deadline requirement. Even if you are talking to us at 4 o'clock on the deadline on the 15th, um, if you're not able to utilize that smart sheet, or if we can't get that application into the smart sheet, there's going to be an issue with our ability to receive it under the deadline. So again, just wanted to point out that those technical pieces are areas where we've seen some organizations have some challenges, and it is not our intent to just kick out applications. We want as many qualified applications as possible for these opportunities. And honestly, I hate it when we have to kick out applications on a technical or on a technicality. But as it relates to the GATA rules, we have little flexibility with that. So I'm gonna go back to the I'm gonna go back to the presentation here, and this these slides um, are a little bit of a preview of what Linda had talked about as far as developing a quality application. But I would suggest these are some pretty common things to consider as you look at your organization's capacity, um, and some options for documenting the need. Um, you know, looking at your overall operational plan. So it's you're identifying the need through this section. You're talking about your how as Linda mentioned, how are you going to address those needs? And then on the return on investment, how are you showing that this is a good use of of the the taxpayer dollars. As far as the just the nuts and bolts of the submission, want to go through the uniform application for state assistance, and this is basically the cover page, and it is downloaded from our um, our website. So if you go to our state of Illinois DCEO page, you can go to DCEO grants here. And actually, I think, let's see, what screen are you seeing? Let me, okay. Hopefully you are seeing the DCEO website. And looking at the grants screen, I'm going to scroll down here to the um, Illinois Returning Resident Clean Job Program. And if you scroll down, you should see all of the required attachments. Okay. So this is the supplement that I was just showing you. This is the attachment A, um, the program application. So let's get into that. So um, this is the application template that Linda spoke of, right? So it is a protected Word document that has um, places where you can respond, right? So you click and you answer the questions that are listed. If you have technical issues with that, definitely connect with us. But the intent here is to um, make a direct correlation between the information that you list in your application, um, link that directly to the program requirements, which are linked directly to the criteria that are listed within the notice of funding opportunity. Okay. So if we go back to the NOFO supplement and we look at the part E, applicant review information and criteria, you will notice that the application criteria is directly correlated with the questions that are outlined in the attachment A, the project application, right? And so you can see exactly how many points are provided to each of those questions. Okay, and so you can see that organizational capacity in this NOFO has 35%, documentation of need has 10%, project quality has 40%, and then the cost effectiveness and return on investment has 15%. And I always tell everyone in grant sessions that don't throw away this last category, because in many grant competitions, this can be the difference between a fundable project and a project that does not meet the minimum score, right? Although there is a uniform budget template that we're going to walk through, we are asking you to provide a budget narrative, because we want to understand that the costs that you are proposing are reasonable and necessary. So, although there is a bit of overlap between the budget spreadsheet that I'm going to show you and the budget narrative, I would strongly encourage you to have a thoughtful response, and don't leave these 15 points or 15% on the table. Okay. I think the uniform application itself, that is posted on the DCEO website. Those forms are fairly straightforward. I don't think that there's a need to go through how to complete those. If you do have issues and need technical support, we're available for you. So what are the forms that I'm talking about? I'm talking about the conflict of interest form, the mandatory disclosure form. These are 2-page forms that basically indicate if you or any of your partners within the application have a real or perceived conflict of interest. The uniform grant application, that one can confuse individuals a bit. I want to make sure that I'm sharing that correctly, so I'm going to go back to it here. And so this is essentially this is a form that DCEO and other state agencies utilize for every single grant. Just know that this, I think it's about 4 or 5 pages, right? This is basically a cover sheet for your grant application. Please do not think that just submitting this 4-page application, is your application. So remember, it's those 5 components, those 5 attachments that are required for you to submit for the application. So uniform, again, this uniform grant application is just your cover sheet. The MOU template, these are this is specific to the project, and more information is explained within the template and within the NOFO, and also letters of support. So I'll just tell you, your primary focus should be around creating attachment A, and then moving to all of those supplemental agreements that show your partnerships and support for the project, and then also to your budget. and I'm going to go through the budget in some more detail right now. So going back to the slide deck here, I'll say that the uniform budget template is it is a challenge. The format of the uniform budget template is somewhat complex. Um, but it isn't intended to trip you up or be a barrier to your application. But we understand that sometimes it can be. So that's why we provided an opportunity within the narrative proposal for you to outline what your costs are and to justify the need and the reasonableness of those costs. So I will tell you that you were following the standard government guidelines around budgets, right? So your costs have to be allowable, reasonable, and allocable, right? So what does this mean? According to the uniform guidance, right? They have to be allowable. They have to, um, they must be necessary for the performance of the award. They have to be related to the award. Your costs have to the costs that you request, you have to treat them in a consistent way, right? So you can't charge the government twice the amount that you might charge other vendors or for other projects, right? So you have to utilize that professional judgment, right, and making sure that you're getting a good deal and those costs are treated consistently. Um, you have to make sure that that your operation is run in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and must make sure that your costs are adequately documented. That's absolutely something that the department will check um, on a regular basis as you request cash drawdowns against the program if you're award funding. They're reasonable. So costs, shouldn't exceed what you would incur for a similar product, right? So, you always have to look at the grant funds, utilizing all of your care, and think of it like your own checkbook, right? Your own credit cards of making sure that the costs are reasonable and necessary, and again that you are you're operating with prudence and and getting an appropriate or a good deal for the use of the funds. Allocable, you have to make sure that those costs are spent in accordance to this project. In other words, you're not just throwing all of the grant funds into an operational pool, and that you are allocating those funds directly for activities that are associated with the returning residents program. So we did talk a little bit about the direct and indirect costs. It is a tab on the budget template that we'll go over, but again, we're not going to focus a ton of time on that. So the budget template has instructions. It has a section for the grant funds. This template does not have a section for match funds, but it does have the certification tabs. Section A, it includes the funding that's provided for the state. It includes standard budget line items, and line items that are not allowed might be grayed or taken off of the budget. Section A, again, is that indirect cost. And if you're going to use your federal rate, are you going to use the de minimis rate, or are you going to choose not to be reimbursed for costs? So I'm going to pause there and shift quickly to the actual budget template. And so this is this is what the template looks like. Um, and you can see there are several tabs here. Sorry, I'm not able to um, expand the magnification on the tabs, but you'll see that there's some general instructions about the template. And then the section A tab is a summary of all of the allowable budget categories. Okay. So you'll see we've got personnel, fringe, benefits, travel, equipment, supplies, contractual, consultant, occupancy, telecom, training, direct admin, miscellaneous, industry-focused training, and supportive services. Both of these are extremely important because as you look at your NOFO, this is where we expect to see a significant amount of the costs. And then you've got your indirect costs. Now, it's important to note for those who've never done one of these budget or use this budget template that you can't just go in here and type, well, I'm going to, do I'm going to do 200,000 for personnel. The key here is that each budget line item, right? So your personnel line, it has a corresponding tab, right? And this corresponding tab is the place that you actually put in the information. So I'm going to put in someone who is the director, and let's just say, and then, okay, just for the sake of, so you can see that you enter in the cost there, and you'll see that that cost is transferred to this summary page. Now, it's important to note that as you work through all of these different tabs, fringe benefits, if there's travel, so you include all that information, it's important for each one of these tabs that you include a short justification of what this cost is, right? It's in addition to the narrative component that you provide, that narrative 15%, right? So a pro tip might be is to basically copy that information directly out of your narrative for your personnel cost and dump that directly here into the narrative of the budget. Okay, so it is I do want to focus around the industry focused curriculum and the supportive service again, because these costs, are defined in more detail in the NOFO. So again, just want to point your attention to those costs or those budget line items. Other important budget template items include this ICI tab. So I know I've spent a lot of time talking about the indirect cost, and so this is this is an area where you will need to select whether you have a federal rate, or if you're going to use the 10%, if you're going to utilize the state, or if you're going to come in for a state rate, or if you're just going to choose no reimbursement of indirect costs. This last tab that I'm going to talk about is the certification. And the certification requires that an officer of your institution or organization, has to sign this. They're signing this this part of the application. When you submit this uniform budget template, we are asking you to submit this as an Excel spreadsheet, but then we're also asking you to print off this certification page, have your executive sign it, and then submit that signed PDF, just the one signed PDF page. And that kind of wraps it up. That's a high level overview um, of the uniform budget. I want to point out just a couple of other things here as we're wrapping up. Um, some additional resources that we have. Um, and just give me one moment. Okay, on the DCEO website, there are a number of training sessions that are already packaged, and I know Linda's also going to um, uh, share some other resources that are specific to CEJA, but I would encourage you to go to our DCEO website and take a look at again in this grants. Um, you take a look at our training resources here. Within the site, you can also um, download. So the session or the part of the session that I talked about pre-qualification, there is a whole video that will summarize. There is a session that talks about the budget overview. Again, does some work about the administrative versus programmatic costs. It talks about procurement standards. It talks about this next item that I wanted to go into more detail about, the grant agreement overview. And if you are especially a new organization and your leadership team wants to see what are the terms and conditions that our organization might be agreeing to, you can download the uniform grant agreement, right? So you can see this is 40 pages of terms and conditions that don't even include your project scope of work. But again, we want to be transparent about the information that that we're going to be expecting you to agree to if you're hopefully awarded a grant with us. And so um, definitely encourage you to review that with your team as appropriate. I'm not going to go through all of those sections in details because I think they're fairly they're fairly straightforward. If you do have questions on those, please let us know and we can go through that in more detail. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up and open up the floor to any questions about the administrative technical submission requirements or anything on the programmatic side that Linda and the team might want to or any questions for the programmatic team. So thank you.